inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Being a kingdom-driven entrepreneur is not the same thing as being a Christian who happens to be a business owner. A kingdom-driven entrepreneur is motivated by seeing an increase of the kingdom of God through the work they do in business, and they are propelled forward by operating from the truth of Matthew 6:33. They seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, knowing that all things will be added. So that's why we're here, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. My guest today is Beth Alexander, founder of Thalia Academy, which provides kingdom-centered online homeschooling education. A former teacher in the public school system, Beth took a step out on faith in May of 2021 to resign from her teaching job and launch the vision that God had given her to provide innovative kingdom solutions in education. In this conversation, Beth shares her story of how she dreamed with God, strategized with the master strategist, Holy Spirit, of course, and navigated what she called a crash course in business to see this vision come to fruition after it had cultivated in her heart for 7 years. It is such a rich and practical conversation about what it looks like to walk by faith. And I fully expect that this is going to ignite some of you who are listening to take that next best step with God. So listen in and enjoy my conversation with Beth Alexander. Beth Alexander's in the house. What's going on, Beth?
Not much. How are you today?
I'm doing great. We got to hang out recently face to face, which was fun.
That was awesome. Yes, I enjoyed that very much.
Yeah, so we get to do it again in March in Dallas.
Yes.
So those who don't know, Beth Alexander here is the CEO, the founder of Thalia Academy. And she's also the wife of a previous guest and a friend of mine, Beth Alexander, the founder of School of Kingdom. And so I wanted to connect all the dots. When I met Beth and saw what she was doing, I was like, I got to know more. I want to get to know her. So we had a quick chat. And I was like, someday I'm going to have you on the podcast to talk about it. So here we are. So thanks for joining me, Beth.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. I was thinking about how, I've done hundreds of interviews, and out of the hundreds of interviews, I've only had one other person on the podcast that was really focusing on the education space. It was someone, Stephanie Harris, who owns multiple child care centers, and just, it's not overtly a kingdom focused, place, but she brings that to the table. And in your case, yours is upfront. This is a kingdom-centered education and all of that. So first of all, give a little overview about Thalia Academy, and then I want to dig into the story behind it.
Okay. Yeah, so Thalia Academy is an online homeschool program that is kingdom-centered. So what that means is we teach the 4 core subjects: math, science, reading, and history, but we do it from a kingdom perspective. Then we also have created a class that's unique to Thalia Academy called Kingdom Life, where we walk the kids through their identity. What was God thinking when he created you? And we just walk them through that they are a son and daughter. They are kings and queens, and just establish that good identity, the true identity of who they are. And then we walk them through, good father, and then it's just so fun, this class. And then I think my favorite thing is we also walk them through prophetic, how do they communicate with God? And it just unlocks so many things for them and for us. And then it just unlocks things for each other because they begin to speak into each other. And so it's just a really cool dynamic that's been created through Thalia.
Oh my God. So. We're totally going to talk about that later. Okay. And so what's the age range for this, or grade range?
So this year I have 3rd through 6th grade. And then the plan is to extend the grades each year. So next year add 7th grade and then 8th grade and continue up all the way through high school.
Nice.
So,
and then when you said, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the plan is not to go below third just because of the online platform. The younger kids, it's just not quite conducive, but you know.
That part right there.
Yeah.
That's really good. So that was the thing. The thing I did catch that you had said was that it's a homeschool education, meaning that all those children are at their homes, but all the education, them during the day, is from teachers with your teachers at Thalia Academy, right?
Yes. Yeah. So all the teaching is done live. And so they don't have to do anything on their own. The parents don't have to do any of the teaching. So it's really nice, for those parents who want that homeschool experience, but are like, I don't have the capacity to do that.
I understand that person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Super good. All right. And by the way, what does Thalia mean?
I put a couple of definitions together, but okay. for us, it means flourishing joy. So there is a Thalia tree, which is an evergreen tree. And in that sense, it means flourishing. Right. And then Thalia is also a Greek muse of comedy. And so just that joy aspect. And so,
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. And how long has Thalia been around? Like 3? Are you on year 3 now?
We just are on year 2.
You're on year 2.
We're a year and a half in. We just started our second semester of year 2.
Okay. So now take me back then. So give me the genesis of where this even came from. Like, what was going on? Is this even your first business? How the tie to education, all the things. So give me some context.
Okay. So I was in public education for over 10 years. And I love education. Love it. It's not where I thought I would be when I was in my 20s. If you would have told me I'd been a teacher, I'd have been like, you're crazy. That's not who I'm built to be. That's exactly who I was built to be. So anyways, in public education, I loved the educating. I'm not a fan of the system. And I found myself kind of butting heads with the system, never people, right. And never even my administrators. It was the system that I kept butting heads with. And I was like, there's just got to be a better way to do this. And 9 years ago now, the Lord placed Thalia in my heart. And at the time, it was so overwhelming that I was like, that's a really great dream. Don't know how that's ever going to be accomplished. Like, right. I had no vision for it when he placed it inside of me. And so I held on to that dream for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because from my perspective, I was like, it has to be a brick and mortar. And I was like, how is this going to work? Like, and then COVID happened. And it shifted my perspective to see, oh my gosh, online learning can be effective. It can be done right and can be done well. And so that walking through COVID completely shifted my perspective of how it could be done.
And a lot of parents' perspectives around how their kids could learn.
Yes, exactly. And so through that, the school I was working at, my principal contacted me and asked me if I would be the teacher trainer for our campus for all the new technology that we were like being dumped on right. us, which, I mean, it was just, we had to go through it, and I was like, yeah, I would love to do that. And so through that, I learned a lot. And things just started kind of clicking for me. And I was like, ooh, I could do this and do this. But still was very apprehensive of, is it really what I'm supposed to do? Like, right. I could see it, but is it really what I'm supposed to do? So anyways, we went back to school, like back in person, and we were doing this hybrid of online and in person. And it was a lot. It was a very, very stressful school year. But we get to the end of April, early May, and I was in this weird place because it was one of my favorite group of students I've ever had, but I just didn't want to go. And I was like, oh, I just don't want to go to work. Like, and I couldn't.
That was unusual for you.
Yes. Yeah. I could not explain it. I was like, why don't I want to go? Because I love this group of kids. Love them. but I just don't want to be there. And so, kind of condensing this down a little bit, it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was just like whining, like, I don't want to go tomorrow, that kind of thing.
Right.
And Dub said, maybe it's time to start Thalia. And I was like, no, that's not what this is. I don't think that's right. And I was like, who would put their kids in an online school with someone they don't know, like, all this kind of stuff. So he made a Facebook post about my idea. Within 2 hours, it had 157 comments.
Wow, Beth.
And I was like, oh, like people really want this.
So what are give me a sense of what did Dub say in the Facebook post that people were responding to?
So he was like, okay, guys, Beth has this idea. It's called, she wants to start this online school with a kingdom focus. And I can't remember, but that kind of thing. Like, is this something people would be interested in?
Gotcha.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
Because I was like, no one who would do that. Who's going to take their kid? Anyways, 157 comments later of all of them, like, yes, she's got to do this. It's so needed. Like, and I was like, okay, I'm listening. Wow. I'm listening. So I called two of my friends that, I was just like, either tell me to jump or pull me off the ledge because this is crazy. They both told me to jump, and I was like, oh no, oh no, you were supposed to pull me back. Right. So, that was on a Monday, and I just talked to the Lord about it, and he said, it's time. And so Tuesday, I emailed my principal and asked for a meeting. And Wednesday, I resigned, as in like I finished out the school year, just not come back the next school year.
Wow.
And so within 3 days, I resigned from public education to jump into something that I had no idea what I was doing.
Wow. Okay. So now, because there's really you couldn't do like that halfway. I mean, you had to leave that in order to say yes to this. Or sometimes you could do something on the side. In this case, it's like, no, you had to cut the cord.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've made that decision. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I have no idea how this is going to happen, but I know it'll be online. I've got a little bit around this because you've been dreaming about it. There's been something cultivating over, 7 years. So what was your next step? Like, how did you get from, I've made the decision that I'm going to do this, to, okay, Lord, I'm going to do this, to doors opening for you actually doing it? Talk to me about the stages of that, doing that with God.
Yeah. So it was literally all walking by faith, because it was just, he would tell me to take a step and I would step. And so it was just that deep communication with him, because I was like, you told me to do this, so you have to like keep telling me how to do this because I don't know. So it was from that point, then it became, okay, Lord, I can't just jump in and teach, offer a whole elementary like I can't do that. So where do I start?
Right.
And he asked me the question. He said, where do you feel comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, 4th and 5th grade, like in public school, like that's always where I was put, was in that grade range. I was like, I feel so comfortable there. And he's like, start there, just start there. And so I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to open this school. I'm going to offer 4th and 5th grade.
And your daughter, what grade was your daughter in?
So she was in 4th grade.
She was in 4th. Okay.
So when we started Thalia, she joined as a 5th grader.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that helped too, because having her come on, and we gave her the option, because she loves public school. Like she is so extroverted. She's like, I want to be around people. And at first she chose, she's like, I think I want to stay in public school. And I was like, okay, like if that's what you want to do it. And then, I got the download of the schedule of how the year was going to play out and all that. And she saw the schedule and she's like, wait, maybe I don't want to do public school.
That sounds actually kind of good to me.
Yeah. It's like, oh, only 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours. She's like, oh, I kind of like that.
Yes.
But anyway, so going back, he just asked me, he's like, where are you comfortable?
Yes.
And so that's where I started. Then from there, he was like, okay, now you've got to think about curriculum. What are you going to teach? And so he gave me the strategy of, he asked me a lot of questions.
Yes. I love this.
Which was, that's what I need, because I'm an external processor. So ask me a question and so I can process it out with you.
I love it.
Yeah. And so I did some research over, first off, I did research over, okay, do I become an accredited school? Do I be a homeschool? Like, how do I go about this? And so, homeschooling was the best option to benefit the majority of states. Because if I was accredited, then there was a whole lot of extra hoops to have to jump through and all that kind of stuff.
Various state levels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you still have to bring in standardized testing. And I was like, no, get away from that for me. Like, as far away from that as possible.
That was part of that system thing that was agitating you.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so decided, okay, we're going to go homeschool. Like, that's how we're going to, go advertise this and go about this. And so then I started researching, well, what are the homeschool programs that are already offered? Because then how do I become different? How am I not just doing the same thing that's already out there?
Right.
So I did a lot of research in that. And then to create what I call the overview of learning, I pulled the number one homeschool curriculum, and then I pulled Common Core curriculum, and then I pulled Texas TEKS curriculum, because those are the three main across the United States.
Yes.
And just looked across the board and said, okay, what is a fourth grader across the board? What should they know by the end of fourth grade in each subject? And just kind of, charted it out and said, okay, we're going to break it up into 6 learning blocks. And in this learning block, we're going to make sure we know this information. Right. And then how we learn it, we'll get to that,
Right.
Like,
we'll fill in that blank later.
We'll fill in that blank. Because also how you learn it, it depends on the kids you have too.
Right. That goes back to, because I want to talk about that when you were saying there's these standard topics like math, English, but from a kingdom perspective. And I want to dig into that a little bit more. It sounds like you're touching on it right here.
Yeah. And so I just created that overview of learning. So it kind of gave us a roadmap of where to start the year and just flow through the year.
Yeah.
It just all fell together. It was something I'd never experienced before, but just that strategizing directly with Holy Spirit.
Yes.
It just was like, it all just fell into place. And
that's
we
so
were able
good. So there's also the business aspects of this, right? I mean, you're a teacher. You weren't having to think about tuition costs, the cost of actually doing the education, all of those things, making sure that even yourselves compensate, like all the things, right? So how did you kind of function in that when you're like, I'm not only having to like dream with God around like, what is this framework, teaching approach, but I also have to learn business. What was that like?
That was a crash course for me, because I can pull together a lesson like that on the spot. I can create a lesson. When it came to, I was like, oh, I have to budget. Oh, I have to. And it's kind of more hit me this year because I actually have 4 staff members that are getting paid.
Right.
And I was like,
And you were the only teacher?
It was me and I had an assistant.
Okay.
And she got paid, but it was like, here, let me write you a check because, I was like, luckily she lives in the same town as me. So I would just like take her check and,
Right.
And so, the business side of it was a crash course because I was like, you have to create applications and you have to create expectations and you have to do a budget and what software are we going to use? And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about all.
Right.
So, and I'm still in the crash course of business
Yes.
because
I mean, and that's going to be a continuous process, right? Because as it
yes.
continues to grow, there's going to be other things that, I'm curious to know, has he given you vision? Like, where you are now, right? Has he given you vision that you're already like, okay, we're not there yet, but I can see where this is headed. And you're already starting to kind of dream with God around even the support structure and systems that make that possible. Are you in that stage now?
I am in that stage. And it feels a bit overwhelming because, like you said, I can see it,
Right.
but it's okay, how do we get there?
Yeah.
Which is how I felt when he was like, jump and go. I was like,
Exactly.
okay,
Right.
but
I was just about to point that out.
here we go again.
No
Yeah.
different, right? And
Right.
but you're like, okay, I will take that next step. He didn't flood you with a
Yes.
whole lot. He asked you
Yes.
a question, and then he asked you another question. It was just like, okay, I'm going to do this step by step by step, and the pieces came together enough for you to be able to start with your first group of students.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so that's where I am now. We're looking at, okay, we've had, we'll about have 2 years where the structure has been the same. And so we're looking at, I see a change in the structure for
Yeah.
next year. But I'm looking at, okay, how do we make that work?
Right.
How do everything we have like plug into that and then add on to? And so, yeah, I'm definitely in dreaming planning mode.
I love it.
Yeah, for next year. And then of course, because what I feel like I do for next year is what's going to be the foundation for what I see happening for high school.
Yes.
Because what I see for high school is each student gets an individual learning path. Because hopefully they've walked in Thalia for a couple of years, so they have a good understanding of their identity and purpose and what they want to do. And so, like, for instance, my daughter, she has two dreams. She wants to be on Broadway and she wants to own a bakery. Like, those are her two goals. And then I have another student, a young man, who he wants to be an engineer. They need totally different, they don't need the same things.
Right.
She's going to go to like probably more of a fine arts college or, a specialty. He needs to go to a traditional university.
Right.
And so they need different paths to get to where they need to go. And so that's just something that I see in the future.
Yes.
And talking about it, I see it, but it's going to take the steps to get
it's the
there.
process, right? You're getting the frameworks now and
yes.
just walking out the process. No, I love that so much. So, earlier you were sharing how there's kind of a couple of things I want to talk about. You were talked about kind of the frustration with the system itself. And so part of it was like, I'm wanting to create solutions that address some of those things. So I want to talk about what some of those things were. We talked about one of them, which was standardized testing. But I also want to hear you share, when you think about your standard subjects and how you kind of approach education, like how do you bring a kingdom perspective to the standard topic? We understand how it is with identity and the curriculum you're doing that's overtly like we're helping you to grow in kingdom identity and, hear God's voice and all of those things, which we'll talk about. But I also want to talk about what does that look like just in your basic standard classes. So I know I asked you like two questions in one. So let's start with the things that were agitating you in the system that you're looking to bring, kingdom solution to.
Well, of course, the standardized testing. And then a lot of it is because of that, you're only allowed to teach a certain way because the expectation is they have to pass this test. And so it pulls creativity out of education. And kids are creative. They're made creative. And I think as they grow up in the education system, a lot of times that creativity is taken away from them. And so I wanted to put that back. I wanted to bring back the creativity and the imagination. For the kids to be able to enjoy learning. There's things that I did in my classroom that a lot of teachers, didn't do, I would let kids pick their topics. There was a lot of free choice in my classroom because that's how I would want to learn,
Right.
And so and bringing it back. So I was actually having a conversation with a friend last night and just talking about I feel like with Thalia, I'm taking it back to when I was in elementary school and how we got to learn back then. And so, because I remember loving elementary school because it was always so fun and we got to do, projects and all these things. And it wasn't just sit down and make sure you can answer 50 multiple choice questions correctly, know?
Yes.
And so with that, in Thalia, I don't do tests. We don't have testing. They have independent work and they have activities that they do independently. And I can know exactly the same thing if they understand it or not as if they were taking a 50 question multiple choice.
Right.
I actually learn more from letting them be creative. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we do a lot of that, and I always tell the kids, I'm like, learning doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
Learning's not hard. Let's make it fun, and sometimes we just do a simple activity, and just to have fun and engage and, work the muscle of the brain because you got to work it out, for it to grow and to learn. So
that's so good.
Yeah. Good.
So then don't let me put words in your mouth. But so when I hear that, when I think about the standard topics, English, math, whatever, social studies or whatever things you have to do, the idea here is the topics are the topics, but what you're doing is bringing nature of the kingdom, bringing creativity, bringing freedom, bringing focus on the identity of the student and how they may learn or how they're designed to function, bringing in the beauty of joy in the classroom. So it's almost like the topics are the topics, but what happens is you're creating an atmosphere and a framework of learning that's bringing in the nature of the kingdom. Is that fair?
Yes. That is a great explanation. Yes.
I love that. So good. Okay. So tell me I want to hear some fun stories because you had shared in the earlier part how, you have this kind of identity focus and also this prophetic exchange, the kids learning how does God speak to them? And then that engagement with one another. I would love to hear a fun story of what you've experienced with the kids as they're learning about, who they are in God and how he speaks to them and all of those things.
Yeah, so I got to pick one because these kids are so great. I think one of my favorite activities we've done, we read a book called My Name is Aviva, and it's about this girl who is kind of embarrassed by her name because it's just different, and she is from a different nation. Anyway, so she's embarrassed by her name, and anyways, it by the end, she learns what her name means and that it's part of who she is. And so we used that and we actually had all the kids research their names. And so it's like tying, reading and kingdom and identity all together.
Yes.
But they researched their names and some of the revelation that these kids picked up about who they are just based off of their name. And then we took their names and okay, now let's talk about what does that mean? What does that look like? How does that show up in your life? So for example, my name translates to lighthouse.
Did you say lighthouse?
Lighthouse, yeah.
Oh, nice.
My first name, Beth, means house, and Helen means light. So it's house of light or lighthouse. And so I used mine as an example. How do I show up as a light? How does that just everywhere? I go. And so they were able to see how they were already walking in that identity just because of who they are. They don't have to do anything, but it just showed this is just who you are. You know?
Every day someone's calling you by this.
Yeah. And so then we were able to take that and create some I am statements, some declarations
nice.
I am his lighthouse, and this is what this means, And so each kid was able to stand up and say, I am, and then they had a declaration of who they are. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so great. It
That
was
is
so
so
cool.
cool. I love that. I
Um,
love that.
and through that, it built a confidence in them. And then that's after that is when we started shifting into, okay, now let's talk about how does God communicate with you? Because they understood that he had put an identity into them, and that because of their identity and the fact that they are their son or his son and daughter, they can communicate. And so then we started going after that. And it was such a cool, like, this was like a 3 week span that we did like all of this.
Yes.
And by the end, like, you know, we had kids by the end of all of this going, oh, well, this is what I hear God saying this, or, oh, the Lord just showed me a picture of a turtle and this is what it means. And so like it's just crazy
I
because
love it.
there's no filter.
Yes, it's
And
just
they
such a
just,
purity. Yeah.
yes,
It's
yeah.
so good. I remember one time when I went to speak at Heaven and Business Conference, and Andy, my friend who leads Heaven and Business, said, hey, I was actually with Dr. Tony. And so Andy had set up a time for the two of us to go over to the Bethel school. I think they were elementary. I think it's an elementary school. And we go over there, and the teacher of the classroom had asked all the kids before we got there. They'd said, there's two special women coming here. We want you to ask God what he wants you to share, with them. And the teacher had them all draw these pictures. And when I went in there with Tony, we're sitting there, they're all saying hello. And it was the sweetest thing to see each of those kids. They would take their little picture that they drew and they'd come up and they'd present it to us and they'd say, this is what God showed me about you. And I still have those pictures because the accuracy, Beth, of
Yep.
some of those kids, I have like 4 of them that I'm like, you just straight up confirmed the stuff the Lord's been talking to me about, like in this season. And I still have those little handwritten, hand drawn on with Crayola marker things that remind me of me. It's just so cool that you're doing with kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. That's
It's
so fun.
We by the end of last year, we would pull up a picture of a person, and the kids would prophesy. We would record a video, and the kids would prophesy, and we'd send it to that person, and they would be like, "How do they like?
How did they know?
How do
Same
they
Holy
know
Spirit."
that?" Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Without all of their filters and fears of, all of that.
Yeah.
That's what's so beautiful about that. And I think about this, and even with the messaging around Thalia Academy being what it is, I mean, it is centered in Jesus and kingdom principle and all that stuff. I truly believe it will attract parents that aren't even necessarily like, I don't, I'm not sure if I care about the Jesus stuff as much, but I love what you've just described for my kid. And yet then their children come in and they encounter God for themselves. And I think that's really quite awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the goal. I'm not, of course, kingdom people, I'll take them all day long, but even non-kingdom, like, come on, like, just sit in this atmosphere.
Because the atmosphere will be attractive. It's like, there's the fruit of what's going on will be attractive.
Right. Yeah.
That's so fun. So, okay. So what are you kind of, when you think about the stage that you're in now, you've gone through a whole school year, you started a second, what are kind of the core learnings for now? Where are you being stretched right now in this process?
Yeah, I think I'm being stretched, like, honestly, like finances,
Understandable.
Budgeting, like how all of that works. There's just been, things that have come up this year that I was like, oh, that didn't happen last year,
Right.
But we went from 8 students to 18 students, and we went from 2 on staff, there's 4 on staff, and so it's a big jump in a year. And so I think just the growing pains. There's always the growing pains,
Yes.
And so just learning how to continue to grow and move forward, I think is the stretch for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you have, Holy Spirit's still always available, giving you strategy? Do you feel like you're well surrounded with like godly counsel in certain areas and knowing that the Holy Spirit gives you strategy, do you feel like you've found those pieces to kind of come together to walk this out? Or are you still kind of putting those pieces together?
I think I have the pieces. Yeah, I think it's just, I'm just at the point now that it's like, okay, what is the next direct step? Because right now I see the big picture.
Yes.
Very, very clearly, but I just need, okay, I can't do all of that. So what do I focus? What do I focus on
now?
Now
That positions me for the later. Right.
Yes. Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now is, okay, what's the next step in right now?
Yeah.
So
really good. Okay. So it's January. I don't know when this goes live. It might be in February. So whatever it is, you're right in the middle of the school year. At what time do you actually bring in more students for the next? What's the timeline look like?
Yeah. So I will open up applications in April. Starting in April.
Okay.
And so our class sizes, I limit class sizes to 8 to 10 students, because I want that small group feel. I want that, if they have a question that, they're not scared to ask because we are a small group and that kind of stuff. So that small group is very important to me. And so, I'll open up applications starting in April. And a lot of times it'll be a first come, first serve. It's not anybody gets priority over anybody else.
Right.
Kind of thing. So I do think I've learned a couple of things through the application process. So it's going to look a little different this year.
Yes.
I think I didn't ask enough questions.
Understandable, right?
Yeah. So
those are the things we learn as we go. You just don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've learned a lot in that area. So the application process will look a little different than it has in the past, but yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I love it. So for people who want to get more information about the school and connect with you, where do they go?
So our website is thaliaacademy.com. And on there we have, I've listed our overview of learning. We have our schedule because we have a very unique schedule. It's nothing like a public school schedule. We do our own thing when it comes to our schedule.
4 hours earlier, 4 hour school day, and no homework outside of that.
No homework. The only time you would have homework is if you didn't finish it during the school day.
Right.
And but yeah, so our schedule, we do 4 days a week, 4 hours a day. So Monday through Thursday, 4 hours a day. And we do 6 learning blocks. So learning blocks are either 5 to 6 weeks long, depending on holidays. We have holidays to think about in there. So we'll do a learning block 5 to 6 weeks, and then we take a week off. And then we come back and do the next learning block, and then we take a week off. This year we took the whole month of December off. And I was a little nervous. I was like, are we gonna be able to come back and jump back in? But we did. Everybody came back and jumped right back in, and it was great. So yeah, our schedule is very unique, but they can go to the website, thaliaacademy.com, and there's so much information on there. And then we also have a Facebook page, at Thalia Academy. And I post stuff on there quite a bit. A lot of times I'll put, what the kids are doing or different projects and stuff. And so, yeah.
I love it. Well, we'll make sure we link all of that up in the show notes. I know, we were talking about having vision for a thing and then being at the step that you're at. What it really excites me, your right now excites me. But when I also think about the multiplication effect of the things that you're learning right now, when it's to the point where you're helping others to duplicate, those frameworks that will be duplicatable, that then reaches so many kids. Like, I'm already pumped up about that.
Yes.
Because we know it's coming.
Yes. Yes.
We know it's coming.
I know Thalia is like the prototype. For what others can do. Like, I don't want to hoard it. I want to learn how to do this and then be like, okay, look, if you have a passion for this, like, let me help you build your own.
Yes.
And reach as many. I mean, I can't change the education system by myself. I just can't. It's too much. But I can put structures in place. I can do this. The Lord has recently given me a vision for training kingdom teachers.
I love it.
Teachers that are still in public school,
Yes,
because we need that.
that's right.
They have to be there. And so taking what I've learned from public education, what I'm learning now, and okay, what does it look like to be a kingdom educator in the public school space?
So good.
There
I'm
needs to be
so
kingdom
glad to
education
know that he's
everywhere.
talking to you about that, by the way. That
Yes.
also means that there's someone I need to connect you to. So I'll make sure to do
Okay.
that. This is so good. Thank you so much, Beth, for joining. I'm excited about what you're doing and
Thank you.
your willingness to keep taking every step along the way and pioneering something. And it's just such goodness. So thanks for joining me and sharing.
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. I appreciate everything.
Such a delight talking to Beth Alexander. Just love her heart and just how God has her moving in this area of education. Such good stuff. Now I have with me Mr. Bynes, my dear husband and our CEO, to talk about his takeaways. So what's going on, Phil?
All is well, my love.
Awesome. So talk to me about your takeaways.
Okay, so my first takeaway here from Beth's conversation is sometimes God gives us a seed of an idea way before it's time. Mm-hmm. And so that's basically the story of the school. Like she got the idea for the school before she was ready to leave, way before.
That's right.
The second point I have here is the kingdom approach to implementing change starts with recognizing the problem is not with the people, but the system, and
that's a word.
Yeah. A scripture came to mind immediately when I thought of that, is that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, right? It's not about the people. The third point I have here is God will allow you to start your faith leap where you feel comfortable. And the side point I have for that is that's because it's not really a faith leap. It's a faith step.
Sometimes those faith steps feel like gigantic leaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels bigger than what it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the fourth point here is when you are called to be a catalyst for change in a system, you won't have to toss everything from the previous system into the trash. Much of what is in the current system can be redeemed. And that really comes from the story of when Beth was finally ready to look into curriculum for her school, how she was able to look at the top curriculums that were out and just like really pick the things that she really liked about those systems and implement them into her current curriculum.
Yeah, it's good. It's like there's foundations that you can build upon. It's not always about, tearing a whole thing down and building something up completely from scratch. I mean, I guess sometimes it is, but a lot of times there's a solid foundation, just like she shared in what she's doing. So I love that. Really, really good. Was that all of them or you had more?
That's all of them, and I guess the thought that I have around what you were just sharing about, you don't have to tear down whole systems, right? Is like, if we really think about it, a lot of times God has been speaking to the people of the world when they're creating things in the first place, right?
Right.
The only thing that's happened is they've added some stuff that he didn't tell them to add. And so those are the things that usually will wind up that you can't redeem, right? The things that were added that are not from the kingdom. And so that's it. That's all I got.
Good stuff. Well, listen, I want to make sure before we go that you know about a resource that we have available to you if you haven't checked it out by now. And it is called Seek First the Kingdom, 12 Powerful Questions to Connect You with God's Mind and Heart in Business. This is all about really helping you to accept this invitation of doing business with the presence of God. And so we have some 12, I'll just call them starter questions, but they're important ones that'll really help you to connect with God's heart and mind concerning how you show up in the marketplace. And so it's a digital resource that is completely free to you to download. So you can head over to meetingwithgod.biz. That's meetingwithgod.biz and download that. And don't just download it and read it. Don't just download it and read it, but also apply it. And I believe you'll be blessed. All right, Phil, anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I'm gonna be good.
You're going to be good today?
I'm gonna be good today.
All right. Well, then we will talk to you more next week on the next episode of the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. Take care and God bless.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.